It seems from what you've revealed, the core of the December 9 meeting President Obama called was getting this assessment in position for it to be leaked and weaponized. Now the Department of Justice has organized a strike force to assess the criminal referrals you've sent. What's your reaction to the DOJ's swift action on this? And do you think it'll lead somewhere?
Yeah, I've spoken with Attorney General Bondi. This strike force is exactly the necessary first step towards what will follow coming from the Department of Justice. We have referred all of the documents that we have released, both redacted and unredacted versions, to them for their investigation to look at the criminal options for indictments and prosecution that are available to them.
In 2016, nobody believed it possible for Donald Trump to defeat Hillary Clinton. When he did, it seems President Obama just couldn't take it. He convened a December 9th, 2016 meeting in the White House Situation Room just weeks after Hillary Clinton conceded. He ordered an ICA, or Intelligence Community Assessment, to functionally attribute Trump's unexpected win to the doings of Vladimir Putin. That Obama-ordered phony assessment was about politics, not national security or the truth. The political angle was to discredit Trump before he was even sworn into office. I was in Congress at the time and saw the scheme for what it was. The department appointed Robert Mueller to investigate the president, all based on a sham, a concocted sham by President Obama. We now know without a doubt that Obama, Brennan, Clapper, and Comey were attacking our democracy, all while accusing us of attacking democracy. We know these things because Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard has released hundreds of documents revealing that the mindful objections of senior intel officials were ignored. Foreign spies were given a U.S. government-endorsed platform to smear Trump with abject lies. They used these lies to illegally spy on the Trump campaign. Former CIA Director John Brennan lied to Congress about his role. The cover-up effort was real. Now that Director Gabbard has revealed the truth, where will it all lead? Joining us now, Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. So, Director Gabbard, it's been several days since your monumental release of documents tying President Obama, his CIA director, and his DNI to Russia hoax fabrications. What do you think so far about the public's reaction and the media's reaction?
Well, I think a lot of the public, first of all, thanks for having me on your show, Matt. I think we've seen a lot of people, if you look across social media, those who've been following this closely, they're not surprised at the revelation, but they are surprised, I think, that we have found the evidence that proves that this Obama-led intelligence community assessment was a contrived document that was knowingly made using fake intelligence or substandard intelligence in order to drive this conclusion that President Obama wanted to see, which was that Russia helped Donald Trump get elected in 2016, or at least aspired to. This directly contradicted every other intelligence community assessment, every other assessment that came from the intelligence community for the last several months prior, both before the 2016 election as well as immediately after. But I want to focus here on the media's response, because this has been really what is most striking. When you look at outlets like the New York Times, the Washington Post, MSNBC, CNN, Politico, you'll see in these outlets either total and complete silence, or those who are choosing to cover it are not actually pointing to the documents and the revelations that were released, that we released last week and this week, exposing the truth about this manufactured intelligence assessment. Instead, they're saying, oh, well, President Obama's office says this is bizarre, or focusing on these other issues that have nothing to do with the core, very disturbing revelation that we released that frankly has to do not with Democrats or Republicans, but with the integrity of our democratic republic. It's a serious issue that should concern every American, should concern every serious news outlet. And I can only conflate their silence or attempts at misdirection as one thing, is they're afraid to tell the truth, because if they tell the truth, they'll have to remind the American people that over those 4 years, both during President Trump's election, after the election, and in the years of President Trump's first administration, they furthered the lie. They printed what the deep state actors in the intelligence community and the John Brennans and James Clappers of the world told them to print. Some even won Pulitzer Prizes for it. So in order for them to cover this honestly and objectively and simply report the truth that we released in these documents, they would also have to admit their culpability in furthering this historic lie.
That was the plan all along. It seems from what you've revealed, the core of the December 9 meeting President Obama called was getting this assessment in position for it to be leaked and weaponized. Now the Department of Justice has organized a strike force to assess the criminal referrals you've sent. What's your reaction to the DOJ's swift action on this? And do you think it'll lead somewhere?
Yeah, I've spoken with Attorney General Bondi. This strike force is exactly the necessary first step towards what will follow coming from the Department of Justice. We have referred all of the documents that we have released, both redacted and unredacted versions, to them for their investigation to look at the criminal options for indictments and prosecution that are available to them. I think they understand the seriousness of this, and the fact that this strike force team has been put together to focus singularly on this issue is certainly a positive sign.
Your investigation uncovered witnesses who told you that, or told your team that CIA Director John Brennan overruled intelligence officials who were objecting to the inclusion of the Steele dossier in the intelligence community assessment. How well would some of those witnesses hold up in court or in a public hearing of the House Oversight Committee?
Well, these are some of the most senior intelligence officials within the CIA who came forward and spoke the truth to the House Intelligence Committee's majority staff team that launched this investigation. They spoke to and interviewed over 20 intelligence community professionals, senior officials within the CIA, which is how they uncovered the truth of what actually happened as reported in the documents that we released yesterday.
And I wonder why they didn't come forward sooner. Members of Congress are always curating whistleblowers. There's an inspector general. Were these people afraid to come forward, or why do you think it took this very proactive investigation that you've led to get to this point?
Oh, there's a couple things here. First of all, this report, the results of this investigation that was conducted by the House Intelligence Committee's majority staff, once they finished the report, very quickly it was locked away in a safe in the CIA, in a safe within a safe, I'm told, until very recently at President Trump's direction to make sure that the American people could see the truth. The second thing is I can speak from a firsthand account about the whistleblower within ODNI who worked for then Obama's DNI James Clapper, about how he refused to go along with this. As a result, he was sidelined and cut out of this. He was the cyber guy in the Director of National Intelligence James Clapper's team. He was sidelined because he wouldn't play along with the lie that they were creating. And he did blow the whistle. He raised this through the ICIG. He tried to raise this with multiple members of Congress, including Senator Warner. He never got calls back. They were not interested in what he had to say and what he had experienced. He even tried then to go and report this to the Department of Justice under President Biden and was refused. No action. They were not interested in taking action in this.
We now know that the sub-sources for the Steele dossier were connected to Russian intelligence. We learned that in the Horowitz report. I've always wondered this, Director Gabbard, who was the highest ranking person in the U.S. government who knew that there were Russian sub-sources in the dossier when it was used in the intelligence community assessment?
Well, what the documents show that we've released, and again, this is not my view or my opinion, but the evidence is there for those who choose to actually read what we released, which is that these senior CIA officials specifically pointed out to CIA Director John Brennan that the sources that he wanted to use to support this manufactured intelligence assessment that President Obama ordered be created were basically so trash. They didn't meet traditional intelligence community tradecraft standards, which is why they were never used before. And in these four main pieces of evidence that were used, in every example, John Brennan basically overruled their objections and said, nope, you've got to use them anyway. I think the other important point here is that one of those key pieces of so-called sources that Brennan used for this fake assessment was the Steele dossier. They knew it was discredited. These senior CIA officials wouldn't even think of using it because they knew that it was not a piece of credible intelligence, nor was it a credible source. John Brennan told them to use it anyway, tried to hide it by highly compartmentalizing and classifying this document, and then went and lied to the American people and lied directly to Congress when he was asked very specifically, did you use the Steele dossier in the creation of this intelligence assessment that was published in January of 2017? And in both cases, both to Congress and the American people in an interview, he said no. Emphatically, he said no. It was not used in any way to create this intelligence assessment that President Obama ordered.
Yeah,
it was used.
I was that congressman he lied to. I was the one who deposed him in 2023, and his willingness to disclaim any involvement in that was striking even at the time. I think there are a lot of people who will see this, Director Gabbard, and say, well, we've observed a lot of this corruption, a lot of these bad acts in the past, but we haven't really seen criminal prosecutions, and I'm very sympathetic to the decisions that have to be made at DOJ about the likelihood of a conviction. But one thing I wanted to ask you is whether or not in your investigation you discovered any predicate criminal acts that may have occurred outside of Washington, D.C. You know, sometimes people take a phone call from Palm Beach or Rehoboth, Delaware, or Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Do you think that if there were to be a grand conspiracy charge, that any activity could have been outside the Beltway?
All I can speak to, again, is the documents that we've released and that we have our general counsel and we have attorneys who've been working with us every step of the way, reviewing these documents and preparing them for referral to the Department of Justice for action. In the work that we do, we're going to continue to find the truth wherever it is and bring that about, to bring truth and transparency, and it must lead to accountability in order for us to begin to have any trust that this kind of, yes, it's manipulation and a manufacturing of false intelligence, but why it was created is the most significant thing to all Americans for the future of our republic. It was created because President Obama and his team were unhappy with the choice the American people made in electing Donald Trump in 2016. And therefore, they created this document, again, that contradicted every other piece of intelligence assessments that they saw related to this election. They created it at the protest of senior CIA officials because they would use this foundational document for everything that came after for the following 4 years. The Mueller investigation, what was essentially a years-long coup against President Trump with the smears and the attacks, the FBI raids, the 2 congressional impeachments, the list goes on. And so this action needs to be seen within the context of what happened before and what came after to recognize the conspiracy that exists.
One of the things it was used for was surveillance of the Trump campaign. That surveillance also had as a component these various outreaches to George Papadopoulos. And there's this figure that emerged in the Russia hoax I've been a little obsessed with, Dr. Mifsud. Mifsud is this professor who alleges he can connect Papadopoulos to Putin. We have long believed that that was a person connected to Western intelligence. Did your investigation reveal who Dr. Mifsud is?
That's not something I've seen come before my desk, but I know that our team, again, on multiple issues, including in election integrity, we're going to continue to investigate, to find the truth and tell the truth.
Final question for you, Director, and you've been very generous with your time. Do you think after all this is done, people will ever be able to trust the CIA, FBI, the intelligence community again, or is this kind of what we have to go through to rebuild that trust?
I think telling the truth and bringing about transparency and accountability is essential for any rebuilding of trust to occur. That's really the bottom line. Each of those things, transparency, truth, and accountability, is essential. This is what I committed to the president and to the American people that I would pursue as Director of National Intelligence, and I'm going to continue down this path.
You're doing an excellent job. Godspeed to you, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard. Appreciate you as always coming on the program.
Thanks, Matt.